So this is part 2 of the installing Hellcat supercharger on the Jeep SRT8. I already did a test drive of it with some mock just fuel line setup just to see how it would run and see if everything was working right. But this is the next big update just to show where we've done since last time. And so excuse the ugly lid. That's going to go out to sandblasting and powder coating. But what we've done since is finish the cutting of the cowl and the firewall. So for those of you wanting to do this, just know this is not as DIY as doing it on an SRT8 Challenger, Charger, or a 300 or whatever. This takes a lot more cutting. I cut quite a bit of the cowl there just to be able to run all the coolant hoses, to be able to actually sit the supercharger back in there into the car where the water manifold is. Requires quite a bit of cutting, and so just be aware there's going to be a lot of cutting. So if you have a mint Jeep, this is probably not the project you want to do. There's other supercharger units that will perform similarly that you can likely get and fit better. But I did want to show, so I did run a belt, and I'll show a pull video at the end, but I did run the belt. Everything lines up well. I did a couple pulls. Everything felt fine. But I didn't want to drive it too much because I only had a mock fuel setup, so I had a fuel line kind of running over the supercharger just for those 2 pulls. But really, what I'll be doing is actually changing the original setup I was going to do a bit. I'll be running a 1/2 inch to 8AN line there, and then I'll be running an adapter to the 3/8 quick disconnect there. So I'll have AN quick disconnects on both sides of the fuel line. And so the Jeep SRT8 fuel line and the way it runs is a little bit different than on the Chargers. So I think the setup is going to be a lot better. I wanted to show, first of all, the map sensors and the throttle body harness and how I ran that. So in the previous video I showed I had this extension from the Magnuson 2300 kit, and so I just added it on to the harness that comes from Whipple to be able to run this, but the Hellcat T-Maps. But this essentially will splice into the intake temperature sensor. The other end of the harness goes to your map sensor harness, and then that splits off into where you plug into your T-Map sensor, and so this is where it will land. I noticed this is a little bit shorter than I would like it to be, and this is a little bit longer, so I'll likely be trimming this and kind of splicing it closer just to shorten this up. And then I might extend it, might not. It seems to be working there. What I did have to do though is I pulled off the lid and ran the harness for the throttle body behind the bypass valve, and so that just makes it a little bit cleaner. It's a cleaner way to run it. The Hellcats have the harness coming on this side, and so you don't run into the issue of having to cross over where your belt drive is here. So you won't have any interference on the Hellcats, but on the Jeeps, the harness starts over here, and so I crossed it from behind, no problem. And then I did a similar thing with the boost controller that actually controls the bypass valve, so I still need to tuck this a little bit, but I ran it behind the supercharger, and then it'll connect here to the bypass valve. Another must-have component that you're going to have to get is these T-Map sensor block-offs. I bought these from TBA Machine. They got here really, really quickly, and I ordered 3 of them, so you'll be blocking off 3 and only running 1 of them versus the Hellcats run 4, so you'll block 3 of these off. I blocked this one off, the one behind the supercharger, and the one on the snout, and so you'll need at least 3 of these to... I wanted to show under the steering column, and so where the boost controller actually runs, I'm running the MMX smooth boost controller, and so what you'll have here is this module. There's the controller itself, and it splices into your pedal sensor there, and then you can run the harness through the engine bay, and I'll show where I ran it through. So I'll just have to tuck this wire a little bit, but I was working on some cleanup today. Super simple to install. I'll walk through what you had to do in terms of splicing, but I just wanted to show where it sits inside the car. So the kit will come with a few of these fuse taps, and so what you'll do is you'll remove the fuse of where it goes here. You want something that turns on with ignition, and install this fuse tap in the way, plug in your fuse into the open port on the fuse tab, and then this just comes with a fuse, a 10 amp fuse here to run the boost controller. And then you'll have to run a power wire to your fuse box. These are properly labeled so you'll know which one goes where. and then you'll need a chassis ground, so I ran mine here, and then this is the relay that runs all of it, so I have it here. I positioned all of my wiring and everything here because I knew I had to cross that wire over to the bypass valve, so I found this to be the best mounting point. And then my Jeep, and I'm gonna assume all the other Jeeps are like this, this pass-through is actually blocked off, so it was just taped up there with the plug. So I just took advantage of that, and that's where I ran my wire through. So I think that's the best place for the Jeeps to run this wire for the boost controller. Those of you unfamiliar with how Hellcats work, so Hellcats actually have this bypass valve here that's electronically controlled, and so it varies the boost depending on how much pedal pressure you're applying. So where the pedal position is, it'll change the amount of boost that this bleeds out. And when you have full throttle, it'll essentially close it and you'll get full boost. And so since you don't have a method of controlling this on a non-boosted car, right, on a 6.1 car, you have to run a boost controller. There's several brands out there. I used MMX. I've heard Smooth Boost is great too, but what that'll do is it'll mimic that factory control that the Hellcats have. And so essentially you'll have partial boost at partial throttle, and then once you hit full throttle, you'll get full boost, and that's how you'll achieve full boost with whatever pulley setup you have on your set. One thing that I did want to highlight is how much better the flow is through the intercooler bricks on the Hellcat than it was on my TVS 2300. And so I'll put some videos before or of my previous setup after this, but I just wanted to show really quick how this flows much better than my OEM setup. Look at how well that's flowing. That's flowing extremely well compared to my other setup. So obviously this isn't completely full, but you'll notice the stream is much more powerful. And that just means that intercooler bricks on the Hellcat Supercharger have a better flow path than I had on the TVS 2300. And I'll show my entire coolant setup here in a second, but I just wanted to show flow is much better. And I'll put a clip of my previous setup right after this just to show. So I have my bumper off. I wanted to show what pump I'm running. This is a VMP pump that they use for GT500s. It's a GT500 upgrade. So that's the pump I'm running with my Magnuson setup. My Magnuson setup actually came with a much smaller pump, and I upgraded just because I was pushing the Magnuson really hard. And so if you didn't already have that, you'll have to plan and get some kind of pump. You can run the one on the Lightnings, which is what I was running before. This is also a great pump. But I do recommend having something like this to mount it. It really gives you flexibility of where to grab it. It's just a bracket that hugs the pump there. And then all of that is running to my heat exchanger that came on the Magnuson kit. I will be upgrading this to an AFCO heat exchanger. I had one before and it just broke. But I'll have, I broke it, but I'll have a second one that I replaced this with, and that actually sits here and it looks kind of like a front mount intercooler, so it looks really, really cool. But I'll be upgrading this, but for now, that's what I'm running. And so my pump runs through there, through the heat exchanger, and then it'll run back up into the supercharger, and then it recycles into this. And so I built this ice box. It has a drain, so when I go to the track, I'll fill this up with ice. I can drain it here, and this actually can hold quite a bit of ice, so I'll run this when I'm at the track. And so hopefully once I get everything dialed in, I'll get all of this powder coated and get it looking. Did want to zoom in and just show how tight the coolant hoses are back there with the AC being in the way. And so I managed to get them on. It was kind of hard, but I was able to get the fittings on there. Some AN lines might have been better, but I just wanted to show this is difficult, and so it's going to be hard to actually put these in if you're planning. So lastly, I am going to do a custom intake setup. I don't really want to relocate the battery. I still might, but I think one of my friends is a good fabricator, and I've seen another setup done like this online where they actually looped out and actually came out and still left or exited where the OEM intake sits. So I might still do that. I'm kind of brainstorming whether I want to relocate the battery or not. I'm just not really looking forward to doing that, so I might not. But I would say this has been definitely challenging. It was a lot more work than I thought, a lot more cutting than I thought. Just showing, look at how much of the cowl I've actually had to remove to have the right clearance, to get hoses in, right clearance to fit the hood, to fit the lid on the supercharger. But my hood closes, everything fits fine. I do have a Hellcat hood on this that we'll be repainting as well. And so It definitely closes. I'm not sure how it would do with an OEM hood. I'm guessing it wouldn't, but it has been challenging. Something definitely you have to look into. All your fitments and all your clearances if you plan on doing this on your Jeep. I'm gonna finish by showing a couple pulls that I did on the car, but hopefully we'll have some more better videos of me doing pulls once the project is complete, but more to come.